done with Clark.
One other thing about Clark, he was on to replace Mark Belling yesterday or the day before.
He was
So
pretty
he's
good.
obviously looking for the limelight,
Well,
but he
yeah.
was really good.
He was very
He
good.
was on the ball. It's like he'd been a
But
professional.
you've got to take into, I've lived in
Well, let him
Milwaukee
answer
for
my question
Oh, okay,
first.
sorry.
Okay.
Repeat your question again.
Yes, and I agree. However, how you deliver that message as a sheriff, people can take that literally. So instead of resolving a conflict by either leaving or resolving it through dialogue, some people can perceive it that, well, if things aren't just turning out, well, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use Betsy. You know, so you got to be careful how you articulate how you're going to defend yourself.
I agree.
Because people have to realize it is your due diligence to avoid that conflict first. It is when your life or the life of another is at serious bodily injury, there's that threat of serious bodily injury or death. That's when you take that measure.
Exactly.
But it's how you present that. I would, yeah, like I said, a different choice of words. Now, it was interesting.
I have one. You said it's our responsibility to avoid the conflict. In other words, you're saying you should retreat?
I think if that chance there to retreat, you should take that because you are going to be faced with that in court. Why didn't you? Why did you
If you're
take
in your own home.
The burden of
Oh, no,
proof
no, no,
is
I'm not
on
talking
me.
at home. I'm talking just conflict. What's your definition of conflict? Everybody is going to have a little different version. Ah, okay, a strong disagreement.
Marriage.
You got that, right?
Marriage.
Aren't you better off in a conflict stepping back from a confrontation than stepping forward?
Exactly, and that's what I'm getting at. So now, okay, go ahead.
I'll give you, I'm a 29-and-a-half-year law enforcement veteran, city of Milwaukee.
Okay.
Retired 12 years.
Okay.
I rarely, and I know there's the reason that you rarely hear anybody in law enforcement in your position or the DA ever talk about citizen's arrest. But that statute exists, does it not? In fact, I have very much low esteem for our DA because of things that have come out that he has said. Like when the man who took and stood up when his wife was attacked in Plymouth, and he said he was acting as a vigilante. You know, if my wife is attacked, I will take whatever necessary actions, and I can take and claim it as making a citizen's arrest. So when you say I should take and step back from a confrontation, I don't necessarily agree.
Ah, but in this case here, if you're going to use your wife, you had to step in. If your wife was being assaulted, stepping away will cause only more injury and harm to your wife. You had the responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, of intervening.
But I'm just saying, I was using that for what, you know, what, because he was claiming that this man acted as a
Well,
vigilante. But if I'm in a confrontation, you know, with somebody, and he is being the aggressor, why should I step back?
Ah, okay. So now, yeah, we get back to definitions. At what point, though, are you justified in actually using a firearm to end that conflict? Aren't you better off? You don't know if he's armed. I mean, in this situation here, if somebody's getting in your face, we got two groups, or two individuals. They bump shoulders on the sidewalk, and it starts a conflict. You know? Now, you got two ways you can go about it. You can either get in his face, you can start jaw-jacking, right? And what is that going to lead into? That's going to lead into something more likely than not, something physical. Well, nowadays, you don't know who's carrying or not. What I'm suggesting, and in this case here, it is not worth a dead body because you bumped into shoulders and say, hey, I'm sorry. Doesn't make you less of a person, doesn't make you less of a man. You know, just avoid that conflict because you may be carrying, he may be carrying. But now, it's a conflict over bumping shoulders on the sidewalk. At what point are you justified in actually using your weapon?
What about armed robbery?
That's a different story.
Yeah, let's
Armed robbery. Armed robbery is different. You are protecting you and your property, And if you are in threat,
Mortal danger.
mortal danger, serious bodily injury or death, you have the right to protect yourself to whatever degree is necessary to stop the threat. That, and you're good with that. And I encourage that. However, I think when you talk about down there in Milwaukee, I think it's a totally different scenario than what we have up here.
Yeah.
You know, it's a whole nother world down there.
Cesspool.
Yeah, it's totally different. We should be feeling blessed that we're up here and that we're not having to strap sidearms onto our hips every day when we go out because we are fearful.
It may happen.
If we allow it as
If
a
the
community.
government collapses, we have zero liability people, what do you think they're gonna come after?
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I think that we have a lot going for us here because of the values we have here. The community itself, I don't think is going to allow us to continue the way we are. We are seeing a lot of partnerships forming and people resisting. We don't want our city to become a city where we're fearful of
To walk
walking the
outside,
streets.
yeah.
You know, now some people have that perception now, but I'm telling you, you're safe in the city of Sheboygan. That stuff that you're hearing in the paper, it gets the paper 3 times. You gotta remember some of this. So if there's a drug bust, you're gonna see it on the front page 3 times. The arrest, right? The pretrial, and then the sentencing, or the trial and then the sentencing. You're gonna hear about that case 3 times in the front page. One incident, okay? Now, some of the assaults and things of that nature that are occurring, a lot of that is gang on gang. Drug deals gone bad. I tell you what, you stay away from gang houses, you stay away from gangbangers, you don't associate with gangbangers, and you're not involved in drugs, chances are you're going to go through living in Sheboygan without any conflict. Not saying something can't happen. Somebody can't come from Green Bay and come to our streets of Sheboygan and pull some kind of shenanigans. But you know what? We're safe here. But we together, collectively, need to keep it that way.
You know, you talk about you forming partnerships, but Sheriff Clark talks about it, and it happens, I think, more in Milwaukee than up here. But you go out, you make the arrest for the burglar, or the burglary gang, send them to court, and they get sentenced to time served, and they're back out in the street again. And that's where all our problems, if you will, escalate because nothing happens to them. You cannot legislate responsibility. All our laws don't have anything to do with responsibility. They have to do with irresponsible behavior and what happens to you. And because the courts don't enforce the penalties, and you have all these people who say, oh, well, it's not his fault because he had such a bad upbringing, he can't be held responsible. You have these people back on, and they always talk about how much it costs to incarcerate somebody, but nobody ever talks about what it costs to leave these people loose.
Here's the deal. The situation that we have, I am not happy that burglars are slapped on the wrist. I tell you, when it comes to somebody invading my home, that is my castle, as such as the castle doctrine, and I see it that way.
I think all
And then
law
there
enforcement-
is talk about feeling violated. Now take a single woman who lives alone, and she's burglarized. How is that person supposed to feel comfortable and safe inside their home knowing that they've been violated? Boy, I just don't think that we do enough of that. However, here's the thing. Most of the people that are in our jails are facing they're facing mental health issues, whether it is mental health or drugs and or alcohol. Okay? And what's happening is these people are not getting the help that they need. Just going to jail for 2.5 or for a year, 2 years or whatever, they're back out. What's happening is that they're getting introduced back into the community where they're surrounded by their triggers that remind them of their use. And they're drawn right back into that lifestyle of chemical abuse, basically
So how do we
abuse.
stop it?
How do you stop it?
Don't say
we have,
rehab again.
no, what's that? Don't say what?
Rehab is like, okay, now we're gonna go around this thing again.
Well, you know what though? The thing is, well, kind of in a way it does involve that. When people are sent to some of their treatment and counseling, it wasn't working. I talked to a counselor, it isn't working. They show up to a meeting, but there's no counseling going on.
Go to church every day.
Well, they could do that. Samaritan Hands is actually going on tonight. Anybody here Samaritan Hands? Samaritan Hands is, Kent Culleth is spearheading that. Kent Culleth, longtime resident, you might have, if anybody ever watched kind of like that All-Star Wrestling, he was part of the James Gang with...
Kenny J.
who?
Kenny J.
No,
James.
I'm drawing a Benninghouse, Tom Benninghouse, okay? Well, he's spearheading this. And I think he's got the right approach for what it is that we have available for us. Because we know that, one, they smuggle this stuff into the jail, okay? And some of this stuff is getting in. So they're maintaining some of their dependency on these drugs. They suitcase it, and we can't do strip searches on people, all right? When it comes to Huber, we need probable cause to search people that are out on Huber, okay? When they come back in, we have to have a reason to search them. I'm actually looking at getting a full-time dog in our jail, just to prevent the drugs from coming in. And we're working on that right now.
Can you do that drug test on their hair now?
Yeah, we don't do that.
Oh.
No, we don't do that. What the probation officers do is another story. However, Samaritan Hands is an organization that takes these offenders and actually has with them, I'm not sure what it is that they call them, but let's use the, kind of like a counselor, okay? They've been down that same path. What this does is, this counselor is, let's say Jim is coming out of jail. Okay? Again. He's a repeat offender. I should have threw away the key a long time ago. However, he comes out and I'm his counselor.
Is sponsor the word?
Sponsor. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's the one. I'm his sponsor.
Oh, okay.
I spend an awful lot of time with Jim. My job is to coach him and keep him on the path of sobriety, avoiding, keeping him from being surrounded by the triggers that puts Jim back into that lifestyle. So kind of in a way, and we're talking 18 to 24 months, I will have to be by his side to prevent him from getting sucked back into that lifestyle. That's how long it takes to beat an addiction. So I've had many of people call and say, hey, Officer Priebe, if you want me to speak, I'd be more than willing to talk in front of the kids or any groups it is that you talk to. I'm more than willing to do it. And the first question I'll ask them every single time is, how long have you stopped using? Oh, 6 months. Oh, all right. I tell them I'm looking for somebody 18 to 24 months. Okay, so.
I'm going to change the
But you talk
subject.
about getting people to break their addiction, and it doesn't matter which addiction, narcotics, alcohol, gambling, until they hit rock bottom and they want to change, they won't.
Correct.
That is true to a certain degree. However, there are some things that can be done. You can do interventions. Some interventions have been successful. That involves a strong family network though, and not always successful the first time around. Sometimes the interventions that I'm aware of, if you want success, I would suggest that you get with a counselor that actually does interventions, and there's only 2 in Sheboygan. With that being said, that helps you set you up for success. From what it is that I've been told, what's that?
No, go ahead.
Go.
Finish your statement,
Sorry,
and then
go.
I'm going to change the subject.
Oh, okay. So at any rate, there are other options. We don't have to accept the fact that they have to hit rock bottom. There's also 3-party commitments that you can do. That usually takes a couple times too, not necessarily the first time around at court either. All right.
There's such
All
a
right.
thing as raising your bar. It's not the guy in the gutter anymore.
Right.
And then I know that there are some people that have come out of jail, they don't know where to go. They don't want to get back into it. They don't have friends, they can't get a job,
Here, I know we want to change the subject.
Yep, I wanna move
And I've got
on.
this gift to Gab. However, I'm going to give this real quick story. She's exactly right. The drug dealers are waiting for Jim to get out of jail. And the first thing they're going to do is set him back up in a situation where he is going to end up using again. And that's what it is that constantly happens. Jim is going to end up burglarizing your home because he's out of money, he doesn't have a job, he's got a felony conviction, nobody will hire him, but he needs his money, he needs his fix. So he's going to burglarize your house. That's the situation that we have. All right.
Okay.
You heard of Celebrate Recovery, that's another.
Oh, that's another one.
Yep.
I've actually heard a success story. I sent some folks down to Teen Challenge, and that was successful. And everyone is just a little different. All right.
All right, I got a question for you. Obviously, the government is trying to put a ban on some of the firearms, and they're trying to get control of firearms in general, which is against the Second Amendment to the Constitution. If they do pass these laws, will you, as a sheriff, take that step and confiscate guns if they
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They, isn't that tyranny?
Yes, it is.
I mean, aren't we supposed to protect the citizens from tyranny?
May I recommend that you inform your office personnel of that, because when they started after Newtown, making noise like the federal government was going to do this, I called your office to ask what your stand would be, and I was told that we would have to wait and see what comes out of Washington first.
Well, I think what ends up happening, though, they didn't have an answer, and we don't know what's going to happen.
What do you mean they didn't have an answer?
What's that?
At the
It's just
time,
cut, it's
at the time.
at the time?
At the time.
Oh.
Yeah. You know, so, and they're looking for, we want to know what it is that, what is going to happen. I think the focus, my personal opinion is this focus on taking away the weapons, I think is the wrong thing. The root cause is mental health.
Yeah.
You go
Yeah.
back several decades when they took away the funding for mental health, that's when, and then basically the people are out there in the street. Those are the ones we're dealing with. And until we start getting some funding back in, now I'm not saying I'm not against background checks and mental health and things of that nature. I mean, we need to do what we can do to keep those guns out of the hands of these people that are not mentally stable.
What about registering law-abiding citizens, though? Because that's one of the things that they're going to try and shove through.
We don't know that yet, but.
They're going to try.
Well, I got a question, but you know, you talk about the gun crimes and stuff like that, but when these crimes get prosecuted, the first thing that usually gets thrown out is the gun charge. They don't put the maximum effect on what they could. I mean, if you had mandatory sentences anytime a gun was used to commit a crime and enforce that to the letter of the law, but that's the first thing that seems to get thrown out every time these cases go to court. They don't follow up on that.
Well, I think that's where the citizens maybe monitoring what judges do what and hold these judges accountable. I'm accountable. If I'm not doing my job in 2 years, I could be out of a job because you're holding me accountable for leading the Sheboygan County Sheriff's Office. And if it's not to your liking, however, how often are the judges ever challenged?
Yeah. Right.
They're not, but I am. Mm-hmm. Now, who do you have? Turn that thing off. No. You know.
No.
Okay. Do a dance.
The courts are problematic. I mean, everybody knows that.
And you know, it's not unique to here.
Well, it's
No.
not only, but it's not only the judges in this case, because he's saying that the charges are dropped. That goes to the Checo.
Well,
DAs, yeah.
I think
I mean, because that's where it starts. And I'm sorry for interrupting.
No.
Can't we
You're right.
legislate in some minimum?
Why don't we get a new DA?
We need a new deal.
all right, was there a question up here? Jerry.
I may not have this correct, but about 5 years ago, Sheboygan County was gonna float a bond issue to expand the jail, and now they have so much empty space that they're renting out to Manitowoc. What happened?
Oh, no. What happened was, when it comes to our jail, yes, we were looking at an expansion at $24 million of phases 3 and 4 out at the detention center out in the industrial park. The previous administration started an electronic monitoring program as part of their alternative to incarcerations program. And what that has done was allowed us, we're up to about 40 people that meet the criteria that we can actually have them monitored with an ankle bracelet, and we monitor them with the use of satellite, and we're able to track where they go. We can keep them at home. So they are our least risk violent individuals that are kept basically in their home, freeing up a bed space. We keep the bad ones, we can't. And if they revoke, they're done. And I've done that. I've had parents calling me, why are you revoking? I want my son back. Sorry, I ain't gonna do it. We're gonna keep him in jail where he needs to be. Yes.
Going back to the firearms issue.
Well, and then I'll finish his question then.
No, but
We only have 5 minutes left,
the
so.
police chief in Milwaukee clowned himself in front of the Senate hearings by saying, I'm not gonna do a paper chase. I know that Sheboygan County has a number of firearms dealers. Do they turn in the people who are rejected because they're a felon, they have where they actually are taken and violating the registry, the
Background check.
background
right?
check.
Yeah, they're.
Do they come to you?
No, I believe they go to ATF.
That's a federal background
Yeah.
check, but if that's what was one of the things at Newtown. They said, well, why can't they, if they're denied their background check, are the local cops following up on it? Do you get information ever from the feds and they say, this guy lied on his background check, can you go check this guy out?
No.
That happened to the kid that was the shooter in Newtown.
Yeah, no, we don't get that.
Couple
Everything
days
goes to
before.
it. Right now, I have an application for a silencer and or a muffler for a .30 caliber weapon. All right? If that person, now don't get me started on silencers. I mean, there is actually a neighboring sheriff actually signed off on one. Turned out that guy ended up selling his weapons to the thugs in the street in Milwaukee. So that came back to haunt him. Silencers, I'm sorry. I love shooting AR-15s. They are just a wonderful weapon to shoot. I think they are fun. We have them, but I don't see a need for silencers. But nevertheless, that application, I have to do a background on the person, and if there isn't anything that warrants that this person should not be in possession of this type of firearm, I can note it on there, but it still goes to ATF, and they're the ones that determine whether or not he's going to get that permit. All right, now going back to juveniles, we're going to board our juveniles out, but because of the success of the program and the people that we have in there that are freeing up these bed spaces, we moved the females that were downtown at the original jail, moved them out to the detention center out in the industrial park, and now we have this additional space that we can take in people from other counties, especially juveniles. Well, we got enough bed space anyway. We got 21 beds, and we have plenty of space because we only average around 5 or 6, so we can take in others. But now we go into spikes. Earlier this year, we were getting close to almost panic because for some reason we had a real influx of inmates. And when we get to around 100, 190 or so, we start to panic because there's classifications where you put people, all right? And we may have free spaces, but if they are holding cells that kind of like the padded room, that's a bed of ours. However, not everybody qualifies as going in the padded room. So we only have so many places to put people. So when we get to 190, we're starting to kind of panic because we run out of space.
I know this makes you really uncomfortable. I'm getting back to what she said about your office. Are your officers on board with following the Constitution?
Oh, I think so.
You
I mean,
think
I
so, or
didn't
you
go,
know so?
I think
I
you'll.
mean, because.
That's
you
his
like-
decision.
It's his
Yeah,
decision.
yeah,
his decision.
they
He calls the
follow
shots for his
mine.
office.
So are
They follow
you
mine.
discussing this as this is coming out in the media with gun control and everything with them?
I mean, she's saying, shouldn't you be training your officers
Yes.
about the Constitution and, you know, whatever oath they took, what that means in actuality?
They don't even train him in school anymore. What makes you think he's gonna do it?
Right, so, you know,
What do you mean?
at least like.
I think
they
he's
don't
talking
teach
about
it in
teaching
school.
them the
Constitution.
Constitution
In school. And
Yeah.
oh, I thought you
Yeah.
meant cops.
No, I think, I don't,
Because you're in a position of
Authority.
serving and or protecting.
I'll tell you, you know what gets cops all riled up? It's not citizens having guns and protecting yourself at home. I don't think that's a problem in law enforcement.
No,
I don't
But
think,
if they're ordered to do something, you know, then we gotta be concerned.
Go ahead, what are they considering?
what gets them riled up is the concealed carry.
Meaning what?
Meaning, you can have a gun hidden underneath your coat and you go out in the street. That's what makes them nervous.
Why?
Why?
Well, because in our world, when we go up to a car, we are automatically at a disadvantage, okay? We're gonna take that first round. If she wants to shoot, I have no idea who she is. I approach her because we got a phone call that we have a suspicious woman acting a little weird in a city park. Okay? Now this might be common for her, I don't know. No, I'm just kidding.
You got Agnes.
But now,
What color is she?
No, the
but see, the thing is, see, now we're already on edge the way it is. But once the guys got used to this, because I remember when Texas went into concealed carry, all right, we deal with guns all the time. It was a common occurrence. My last arrest was a gangbanger with a sawed-off shotgun that I was chasing down by myself and catch. It was our life. However, when that law went in, we didn't have any issues. Kind of went away. More people are carrying their card. They want the card, not necessarily carrying a gun every day, because you know what happens? It becomes a pain in the butt. Especially in summer. Especially in summer when you're wearing light clothes, where do you put it? Now you're carrying a bag all the time. You go to the bathroom, if you leave it on the toilet, you know, some little kid can go in there afterwards and get his hands on it. It's a huge liability. But they want the card. But for coppers, we're already dealing with guns. We're already dealing with unknown every time we go to somebody.
Right.
Now, putting more guns out there was very alarming to the officers. As time goes on, they're learning, you know, really it's a non-issue.
Right.
And it really is.
Right.
So that just took time for them to see for themselves.
Right.
It's a mute issue.
Okay, we have,
However, oh boy,
we'll
yeah,
need to wrap up.
just did not schedule
It's gotta be the
enough time for
last,
us.
you're obviously a
Last
high
question.
needs employee.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
So is Charles.
So obviously, I'm hoping that we have a public safety committee of the county board that's gonna make sure that you remain challenged. And how long do you think it'll be for you to solve all the problems of Sheboygan County law enforcement and the sheriff's department?
In 2
1
minutes.
minute.
1 minute, wrap it up.
You know, it never seems to fail. There's always something new coming. With personnel issues, community issues, social issues, things that it always just seems. But this is why we're forming the partnerships and relationships, because together we're not going to solve all those problems, but together we can deal with them.
All right.
One
well,
statement
John?
with regard to concealed carry. I don't think you have to be worried about law-abiding citizens having
No.
guns.
No.
That's what we're talking about, though, when you're putting more guns on the street.
Oh, yeah, and we
We're
know
talking
that.
about law-abiding citizens. You should not have to feel uncomfortable. The problem is, you don't know who's the law-abiding citizen.
That's it.
That's the
That
problem.
hasn't changed.
That won't
Right?
change.
No, that hasn't changed.
Yeah, you wouldn't
Right.
know
You didn't know
regardless before.
Well, this was great.
And for the officers, it was a huge unknown. That was
We gotta wrap
take
up.
control.
something new to them. So it was
Yep, Jerry,
kind
ask
of a
a
scary.
question.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh.